Keep your wellness routine going strong all summer. Kachava's new travel packs help you stick to your daily ritual even when you're on the go. Just one packet of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake provides complete nutrition wherever you are, with 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and more. Simplify your daily ritual. Go to kachava.com and use code NEWS for 15% off. That's KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.
To enjoy this episode ad-free, please visit patreon.com/forensic tales.
Forensic Tales discusses topics that some listeners may find disturbing. The contents of this episode may not be suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
Dad?
Yeah, Brandon, where are you?
I don't know. I think I drove into a ditch.
For the next 47 minutes, Brandon Swanson stayed on the phone with his father as the two tried to find each other in the dark Minnesota countryside. Then, without warning, Brandon yelled a single word.
Oh, shit.
The line went silent, and Brandon was never seen again. This is Forensic Tales, episode 338, The Mysterious Disappearance of Brandon Swanson. Welcome to Forensic Tales. I'm your host, Courtney Fretwell. Forensic Tales is a weekly true crime podcast with a forensic twist. Each episode features real stories highlighting how forensic science was used to uncover the truth. If you enjoy deep dives into real cases and the science behind them, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if you want even more content, including monthly full-length bonus episodes and early ad-free access to over 300 episodes, you can join our community over on Patreon. The support there truly helps keep the show going. To learn more, visit patreon.com/forensic tales. And one small favor that makes a huge difference for the show, if you're enjoying Forensic Tales, please consider leaving a positive review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps other listeners discover the podcast. Behind most missing person investigations, there is just a regular person. They are a mom or a dad. Sometimes they are young, others are older. And sometimes they are college students with their entire future ahead of them. And the circumstances surrounding their disappearance are almost too bizarre to understand. That's exactly the kind of case we're talking about in this week's episode. Before the media headlines, missing person flyers, and podcast episodes, Brandon Swanson was just your typical 19-year-old college student. He was born to parents Brian and Annette Swanson on January 30th, 1989 in Marshall, Michigan. In 2007, he graduated from Marshall High School, and by all accounts, was a good student. He was an avid reader and loved learning anything about science, politics, or history. He was also a very environmentally conscious person who loved learning about renewable energy sources. That's why he chose to study wind turbine technology at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. Brandon was the type of guy who was respectful to everyone he met, but wasn't afraid to get into a friendly debate, especially on topics he was passionate about. Throughout most of his teenage years, he worked at a local grocery store, spending his last 2 years in the bakery department. It was a job he really liked, and he got along great with his coworkers. And although Brandon was legally blind in his left eye due to a childhood injury, he never let that stop him from doing whatever he set his mind to. He also seemed to get along great, wearing his signature wire-rimmed glasses. When he wasn't at work or school, Brandon spent a lot of time with his parents and younger sister. His family and friends described him as a sweet, loyal, and friendly person who was fiercely protective of his family. By the spring of 2008, Brandon had big plans for his future and was really excited about having a career in renewable energy. In fact, the very night he vanished, he had just completed his final certificate classes and was preparing to start his second year of courses. Then after that, he planned to transfer to a 4-year university. That would have been a big transition for Brandon, since it would be the first time he had ever been away from home. But he was really excited about all his opportunities. From everything I read about Brandon Swanson while putting this episode together, I have no doubt he would have succeeded in his career and personal life. But for reasons we're still trying to piece together, that future was suddenly taken away from him. Like I mentioned just a minute ago, Brandon had just finished his certificate program the night he disappeared, May 13th, 2008. So the plan that night was to celebrate the end of the year and just have a good time with friends. It's something we've probably all done when we were Brandon's age. And although he likely enjoyed himself earlier that night, what happened later is still one of the most talked about mysteries. According to reports, Brandon left his parents' house sometime around 6 o'clock that evening, wearing baggy blue jeans, a blue striped polo shirt, a black hooded sweatshirt, and a Twins baseball cap that he usually wore to the side. He said bye to his parents and got in his green Chevrolet Lumina. They had no idea they would never see their son again. His night started at a friend's house in the nearby town of Lind, about 7 miles southwest of his home in Marshall. The drive from his parents' house to there probably took only 10 to 15 minutes. The graduation party was just a small get-together of like 5 to 7 people. It wasn't like this raging house party you see in the movies. And later on, the few other people there said that Brandon was enjoying himself and only had 1 alcoholic drink. None of them described him as drunk or inebriated in any way. At some point that evening, Brandon got back in his Chevy, left the get-together in Lind, and headed 35 miles northwest toward Canby, where his college was located. One of his close friends and classmates was moving away, so he wanted to make sure he got a chance to say goodbye, so they met up for another party. While there, friends said Brandon had a few more drinks, including a shot of whiskey, but never seemed actually drunk or intoxicated. He was certainly drinking alcohol, but nothing extreme. And when he left around midnight, no one thought twice about his ability to make it home safely. But to some people, alcohol may have played a role in what happened to him. To be completely honest, no one's sure exactly how much he had to drink at these 2 parties. It's entirely possible he had more to drink than what people remember. And let's be realistic. When you were at a party or get-together in college, were you actually paying attention to how much someone drank? You might if the person seemed really hammered. But if they seem to be acting like their normal self, you probably wouldn't notice. So it's entirely possible alcohol may have played a part in this. And it's equally possible that it didn't. It's just one of the many unanswered questions here. The drive back to his parents' house should have taken him only about 40 minutes. And this was a route he took almost daily because that's where his classes were. So he should have been very comfortable driving home that night. It's not like he was in a town or city he's never been before, but there's something else I want to mention. We don't know the exact time that Brandon left the second party. Some sources I found said it was around midnight, while others say it was closer to 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't think the time discrepancies were intentional, because it's totally possible that the people at the second party just don't remember. Just as they might not remember how many drinks Brandon had, they might also have lost track of time. So I think that's why some reports say closer to midnight, while others say it might have been like 1 o'clock. Going back to Brandon's drive home, instead of taking the way he normally took down State Highway 68, which would have been a straight shot home, he chose to go on some of the back roads. Only Brandon knows why he decided to take a different way home than he was used to that night. But some reports I found said he may have had a previous DUI conviction. And since he was only 19 years old, he probably didn't want to get pulled over again for drinking and driving. So instead of taking the main highway like he normally did, he chose the gravel roads northeast of the highway, thinking he would avoid any cops on duty. But these gravel roads didn't run perfectly parallel to the highway. To get home, he would have had to make multiple turns that followed its main direction. It definitely wasn't a straight shot home like he was used to. Sometime around 1:15 that morning, Brandon's car got stuck in a ditch just off the shoulder of the road. Some reports I found say he was attempting to turn south back onto a gravel road when he missed the field approach and went into the ditch at low speeds. The road he was on had some pretty sudden turns, so it's possible he was either distracted or was just tired and didn't see the upcoming turn. The ditch itself was pretty shallow, but it was steep enough that once Brandon's car ended up in it, he wasn't able to either drive forward or put the car in reverse. He was essentially stuck. At first, Brandon did what any 19-year-old would do and called a couple of his buddies, but neither answered. So that's when he had to swallow his pride and call his parents at 1:54 in the morning to ask for help. Brandon's dad was the one who answered and asked if everything was all right. Thankfully, he said he wasn't injured, but needed help getting his car out. So Brandon's parents got in their pickup truck and drove out to where they thought he was, keeping him on the phone despite occasional hang-ups and drops. Fortunately, Brandon's dad was really familiar with these roads between Lind and Marshall, so he felt pretty confident that he would find him quickly. But when they went to the location where Brandon said he was, they didn't see any sign of him or his car. So that's when Brandon started flashing his headlights, but they're still not seeing anything. He also honked his horn a few times, and although they could hear it through the phone, they never actually heard it locally. Brandon's parents then asked him to describe what he saw around him, but what he described was almost the same exact thing they saw: a long stretch of road and big open fields. If you read about anything connected to this case online, then you know there's a lot of speculation on why Brandon was having such a hard time describing his location. Some people say it's because he was just tired. It's the middle of the night and he's already been to 2 different parties, so he was probably exhausted. Others blame the alcohol. Although none of his friends said he seemed intoxicated, we know he had a few drinks that night. And that may have affected his ability to read his location accurately. We also know he was unfamiliar with these particular roads, and the fact that all the intersections look relatively alike. It's hard to give someone good directions if all you see around is fields with very few landmarks. So as you can imagine, this started to get pretty frustrating for both Brandon and his parents. They drove straight to the location he said he was at, but they didn't find anything. And Brandon's getting frustrated because he's just sitting in his car, wondering why his parents haven't shown up yet. It's also after 2 o'clock in the morning, so everyone's probably tired and cranky at this point. Things got so heated that Brandon even hung up on his parents out of sheer frustration that they couldn't find him. Then, when his mom called back to apologize, Brandon apparently told her he was walking to Lind and would wait for them at his friend's home. He said he could see the city lights in the distance, so he knew he was close enough to walk there. So Brandon's dad, Brian, drove Annette back home to Marshall so she could go to bed, and then drove back towards Lind to pick him up. Brandon and his dad stayed on the phone together for the next 47 minutes. During the phone call, Brian grew a little frustrated that Brandon kept walking through fields and other areas instead of sticking to the main road. But they continued chatting, and at one point, Brandon said he was walking along a fence line and could see the lights of town in the distance. But then, at 3:10, 47 minutes into the call, Brandon shouted, "Oh shit!" and the line went dead silent. Brian called Brandon back 6 times in a row, and each time the phone either went straight to voicemail or he just didn't answer. He never got the chance to speak to his son again. Losing weight is one thing, but keeping it off, that's where it gets really frustrating. That's why Weight Loss by Hers now offers access to the FDA-approved Wegovy pill and the FDA-approved Wegovy pen. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips, like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/tales to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's forhers.com/tales. forhers.com/tales. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
When maintaining your daily wellness rituals is important to you, the change in routine during the summer can feel daunting. Kachava's new travel packs help you stick to your daily ritual, even when you're on the go. Just one packet of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake provides complete nutrition with 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and much more. So you'll be fueled and ready for wherever life or your summer adventures take you. No fillers, no nonsense. Just the good stuff your body craves. Plus, it actually tastes delicious. But you can try it for yourself because the variety pack includes all 6 delicious fan favorites: chocolate, vanilla, chai, matcha, coconut acai, and strawberry. So instead of worrying about sticking to your daily ritual, simplify it with Kachava. Go to kachava.com and use code NEWS for 15% off. That's KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.
Without any clue on what to do, Brian continued driving up and down the roads, calling and looking for Brandon for the next several hours. He also called his wife back at the house, who decided to call some of Brandon's friends to see if maybe they knew where he was. But no one had heard from him after he left that second party. By 6:30 that morning, Brian and Annette reported him missing to the police. Although Brandon was 19 years old and technically an adult, the circumstances surrounding his sudden disappearance led his parents to believe something terrible had happened to him. But at first, the police were reluctant to take down a report. A young college boy not coming home after a night out isn't anything out of the ordinary. So they told his parents to go home and he would probably show up in a few hours. According to Annette, one officer said directly, "As an adult, Brandon has a right to be missing if he wants to be." But Brian and Annette didn't just sit on their hands and wait. They knew their son better than anyone else, and this just wasn't something he would do. And Brian just couldn't get his last words out of his head. As parents, they felt in their guts that something really bad had happened to their only son. Sadly, it took hours of begging and explaining about the disconnected call before the police finally agreed to open the report. And in a missing person case, time is of the essence. While the search in and around Lind continued, police obtained Brandon's cell phone records. And this is where things just get downright bizarre. The cell records revealed that Brandon was nowhere near Lind like he said he was. All his calls to his parents the night before pinged off a cell phone tower near the small town of Taunton, 25 miles away from Lind to the northwest of Marshall. So that detail alone raises a whole other set of disturbing questions for me. Why did Brandon say he was near Lind when he was over 20 miles away? Was he simply lost and mistaken? I know I've already said it a few times. He had never been on those roads before. But how could he have been so lost? We also have to keep in mind that Brandon didn't have the best vision. He was legally blind in his left eye. Now, I want to be careful not to make any assumptions about him, but maybe that could have played a role in his lack of direction. There's no evidence his vision injuries gave him any trouble, but it's just something to consider. There's also the possibility that he intentionally lied to his parents, but if that's true, why would he lie? His car is stuck in a ditch. It's the middle of the night. He's several miles away from home. So why would he deliberately lie about his location? But this detail also explains why his parents weren't able to find him. If Brandon said he was somewhere near Lind, but he's 25 miles away, there was no way in hell they were going to ever find him, no matter how many times he flashed his headlights or honked his horn. By the afternoon of May 14th, the authorities had found Brandon's Chevy in a ditch on the side of the road, just as he said. It was located off a gravel road along the Lincoln County line, just 1 mile north of Highway 68, on the outskirts of the small towns of Taunton and Porter. Lyon County Sheriff Jeff Vizecki described the car as on sort of a sharp incline, nothing major, but enough that the car would get hung up so the wheels are too high off the ground to get any traction. Another issue is the timing. Although there are mixed reports, it's widely believed that Brandon left the party in Canby between 12 and 12:30 a.m., and Taunton is about a 15-minute straight drive from the party in Canby. But Brandon didn't call his parents until almost 2. So what happened during those unaccounted for 90 minutes? When the car was searched for forensic evidence, nothing useful turned up. The vehicle was completely empty of any drugs or alcohol. There were no signs of blood and no indication of a struggle. They never even found a single footprint around the car to give them a clue as to which direction he could have gone in. Forensically speaking, the car was totally and completely useless, suggesting that whatever happened to Brandon happened long after he left it behind. Before we get into any of the search details, we have to understand that this was a very challenging case from the very beginning. Investigators weren't just searching for a missing person. They were trying to find someone whose exact location was unknown. The first challenge was the terrain itself. This part of Minnesota is extremely rural. Searchers had to contend with things like massive farm fields, tall grass, creeks, drainage ditches, gravel roads, and seasonal crop growth. These weren't easy conditions for a search operation. In fact, based on Brandon's own conversation with his father, we know he had left the roadway and was cutting across fields in the pitch dark. From a forensic and search and rescue perspective, a body can be surprisingly difficult to locate in rural terrain. Vegetation can obscure visibility, waterways can alter or move evidence, and vast stretches of land can make even large-scale searches feel like looking for a needle in a haystack. There was also the possibility of environmental factors. Animal scavenging, severe weather, flooding, and agricultural activity all have the potential to disturb or conceal evidence over time. But probably the biggest obstacle, in my opinion, was that investigators initially didn't know where Brandon actually was. Throughout the phone call, Brandon believed he was near the town of Lind, but in reality, he was miles away. That meant search efforts were initially focused in the wrong area, costing valuable time during those critical first hours. And then there was the technology. Remember, this was 2008, not 2026. Cell phone forensics were far more limited than they are today. GPS tracking wasn't routinely available, and investigators couldn't simply pull up Brandon's precise location. They would eventually use cell tower data to narrow down where he had been. But in those crucial early moments, searchers were working with very little information. So this was just a very, very tough search from the very start. Bloodhound search and rescue dogs were brought in to track Brandon's scent from his car. And initially, this worked because the dogs followed his trail across an abandoned farm and then along the Yellow Medicine River. But at the river's edge, the dogs lost Brandon's scent, suggesting he may have gone in the water. And the dogs were unable to pick up his trail back up on the other side. This discovery led the police to search the river using boats from the state's Department of Natural Resources. If Brandon was anywhere in that water, they were going to find him. But the search wasn't easy. In some areas in Lincoln County, the water had been 10 feet deep on the morning he disappeared. So it's not like they were diving into super shallow water. The police also walked the river's banks, and horses and all-terrain vehicles were deployed in the surrounding area. But in the end, and after nearly 30 days of searching, absolutely nothing turned up on either land or in the water. There was absolutely no trace of Brandon anywhere. After the original search turned up empty, most efforts were slowly discontinued. But that didn't mean all hope was lost. Sheriff Vizecki continued to walk the 2 miles of the Yellow Medicine in that area every day for 30 days. And Brian and Annette left their porch light on all night, every single night, as a symbol of their hope that he would eventually return, a practice they continued for at least 5 years. By the fall of that year, searches had resumed after fields planted shortly after the disappearance had been harvested, and dogs who were brought in to help search continued to follow scents of human remains into an area northwest of Porter that hadn't been searched yet. But once again, there was no sign of Brandon anywhere. By the following spring, searchers were back at it again. This time, it was because the snow in the area had melted, and it was before planting season again. By that time, over 120 square miles had already been searched. The most recent major search effort was conducted over the course of August 7th and 8th, 2010. It had been over 2 years since he vanished, and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension had taken over as the lead agency on the case. That particular search focused on the area of Mud Creek, which is also located in the vicinity where Brandon's car was found. The reason why they were there was that additional scent dogs had led them there earlier that year, in March. But as you've probably already guessed, nothing was found. That includes Brandon's cell phone and glasses. Those were never recovered either. One thing I mentioned a little earlier in the episode was the police's reluctance to take Brandon's case seriously. When Brian and Annette called them to report Brandon missing, the police basically shrugged them off, saying he was a 19-year-old kid and was allowed to go missing for a few hours. That's something we unfortunately hear about a lot. When an adult goes missing, the police aren't always quick to respond. And sometimes that decision is justifiable. But in a lot of other cases, it's the wrong decision and causes a lot of unnecessary delay. And in Brandon's case, that was something his parents wanted to change. Over the years, Annette and Brian began lobbying for changes in state law that would require an investigation into the case of a missing adult to begin as soon as it is reported. They wanted adults to be treated the same way we treat missing children, because in Brandon's case, who knows what we could have found if the police had started their search much earlier than they did. So Annette Swanson eventually met with Marty Seifert, who was the minority leader of the State House of Representatives at the time. He was also the leader of the district that included the city of Marshall. The two reportedly met at a local restaurant, and Annette explained to him all the problems she had with reporting Brandon missing. She knew it wouldn't help in her son's case, but that it could help others in the future, Seifert recalled in 2015. So after that conversation, Marty Seifert introduced a bill called Brandon's Law that would amend the law governing the state's existing missing child program to change the word child to person. But not everyone was crazy about it. In fact, many members of law enforcement in the area opposed it, citing privacy concerns. This was happening at a time when technology, specifically cell phone forensics, was improving rapidly. So a lot of people had concerns about privacy and when they can use a person's cell phone data to track their location and when they can't. So the biggest concern was over a person's privacy. But eventually, the lawmakers came around and saw the importance of it. And in May 2009, Governor Tim Pawlenty signed it into law with Brandon's family, including his parents and sister in attendance at the ceremony. Before Brandon's Law, there was sometimes a lot of confusion about which agency was responsible for a missing person investigation, especially when multiple jurisdictions were involved. In Brandon's case, 3 different counties ended up playing a role in the search efforts, creating challenges during those very important early stages. But this new law helped clarify that responsibility by establishing a lead investigating agency and requiring law enforcement to quickly notify neighboring agencies when a person is reported missing. But in my opinion, the most important part of it is that Brandon's Law made it crystal clear that police couldn't delay or refuse to take a missing person report simply because they believed the person left voluntarily, because only a short amount of time had passed, or because there was no obvious evidence of a crime. The goal was simple: treat missing person cases seriously from the very beginning and eliminate unnecessary delays during those crucial first hours. And not only did this law become active in Minnesota, but it has since inspired similar laws in several other states over the years. So Brandon's case and story has reached many, many others in a positive way. At the time I'm sitting down to record this episode, Brandon Swanson has been missing for a little over 18 years. That's 18 years of questioning, 18 years of searching, 18 long years without answers. And despite hundreds, if not thousands of hours of searches, one thing remains the same today as it was on that spring morning in 2008. No one knows what happened after Brandon uttered those final words. So what are the possibilities? What could explain how a 19-year-old college student seemingly vanished into thin air while talking to his father on the phone? Let's take a look at the leading theories.
When maintaining your daily wellness rituals is important to you, the change in routine during the summer can feel daunting. Kachava's new travel packs help you stick to your daily ritual, even when you're on the go. Just one packet of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake provides complete nutrition with 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and much more. So you'll be fueled and ready for wherever life or your summer adventures take you. No fillers, no nonsense. Just the good stuff your body craves. Plus, it actually tastes delicious. But you can try it for yourself because the variety pack includes all 6 delicious fan favorites: chocolate, vanilla, chai, matcha, coconut acai, and strawberry. So instead of worrying about sticking to your daily ritual, simplify it with Kachava. Go to Kachava.com and use code NEWS for 15% off. That's KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.
Based on the research I did for this episode, the most popular theory seems to be that Brandon experienced some type of fatal accident. The first is one we touched on a little earlier. He accidentally fell into the Yellow Medicine River while walking through the dark and drowned. The reason why this becomes such a strong theory is that Brandon's dad, Brian, later said that he could hear running water in the background while they were on the phone together, and how the dogs picked up his scent that led directly to the riverbank. And the oh shit that Brian heard on the phone could have been a sudden slip from a steep bank. I know if I accidentally go down, those would probably be the first words out of my mouth too. And if Brandon accidentally fell into the river, that would have created a nightmare for forensic evidence. Water can destroy forensic evidence very quickly, and bodies don't always surface, especially if they become trapped by something under the water. So although they spent days searching the Yellow Medicine River, it's still possible they just missed him. But the river theory certainly isn't perfect. The river itself isn't extremely big, and like I just said, the police spent days searching it. And even after an extensive search, they didn't find a single thing. Not Brandon's body, not any of his clothing, not his signature wire-rimmed glasses, not even his cell phone surfaced. I can see why his body might not surface, but it's strange to think that nothing did. If Brandon drowned in that river, everything he had on him stayed below the surface, somewhere no one could find it. The second idea under the accident theory is that maybe he died from exposure, possibly hypothermia. The theory is that Brandon, who was slightly disoriented and potentially exhausted, wandered into a remote, unforgiving rural area. He might have even passed from hypothermia if the temperatures were cold enough out there. Maybe he tried curling up in a ball for warmth in an unsearched field or drainage ditch. This could explain why tracking dogs or searchers never physically located him. And one thing about Brandon that I haven't mentioned yet is just how small he was physically. He was only about 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed barely 120 pounds, so he wasn't a very big guy. But none of that explains the oh shit. That detail alone tells me something sudden happened to him. And I don't think he could have died from some type of exposure or hypothermia accident that suddenly. I also read online that some people think this might have been an agricultural accident. Because Brandon's route took him across farmland and open fields, some people wonder if he could have fallen victim to some unforeseen hazard associated with local properties. For example, maybe he fell into an abandoned well, a deep cistern, or an agricultural drainage hole that was hidden by the tall crops or brush in the area. And the rugged terrain and heavy machinery could have unintentionally covered or shifted the earth over him. Maybe that's why we've never been able to find him. But you have to go back to the biggest problem in this case. Why haven't we found even a single piece of evidence connected to him? A single sock, his shoes, his sweatshirt? Why can't we even find a single piece of clothing? If he simply fell and died nearby, is it really possible that we won't ever find him? The second most popular theory is much more sinister. Brandon Swanson became the victim of foul play. Here's why many people like this theory. Brandon would have been incredibly vulnerable and alone out there in the dark fields. That alone already makes him a target. We've also spent a lot of time talking about his last words to his dad on the phone. If someone approached me in a rural field in the middle of the night while I was alone, I'd probably yell, "Oh shit," too. And I think the biggest reason why a lot of people like this theory is because if someone killed Brandon, that's why we've never been able to find him. But once again, this theory is far from perfect either. There's zero forensic evidence that a crime ever took place. There were no signs of a struggle either at his car or in the fields. No suspicious vehicles were identified. Plus, Brandon wasn't the kind of person to have any enemies. So if he became a victim of foul play, he would have simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. For me, foul play is definitely possible, but there just isn't any physical or forensic evidence supporting it. And to be completely honest, none of these theories checks off all the boxes for me. Even after going through all the sources I did to put this episode together, I still have no idea what happened to Brandon Swanson while talking to his dad on the phone that night. Did he accidentally drown? It's possible, but I'm troubled by the fact that we've never found him. I also found no evidence suggesting he didn't know how to swim. So even if he fell into the water, why wasn't he able to get out? And could the lack of vision in his left eye have contributed? We know it must have been incredibly dark out there. So maybe his vision limitations played a role in the type of accident he might have experienced. There's also a chance alcohol could be to blame. If Brandon drank more than his friends remember that night, it's possible that alcohol is the reason he accidentally fell or drowned. Or did he become the victim of foul play? Again, it's possible. But I didn't find any evidence supporting that other than the "oh shit" comment. To me, that seems like a reasonable reaction to encountering someone unexpectedly in the dark. I also read that some people wonder if he could have been struck by a vehicle and the driver hid his body instead of calling for help. However, authorities have dismissed this as highly unlikely, as there was zero evidence of a vehicular collision found on the roadsides he was known to be walking. So that theory isn't any better than the others, in my opinion. Brandon Victor Swanson was last seen on May 15th, 2008 in Canby, Minnesota. At the time of his disappearance, he was 19 years old, 5 feet 6 inches, and 120 pounds. He has naturally curly brown hair and blue eyes. And like I've mentioned throughout the episode, he is legally blind in his left eye and always wears wire-rimmed glasses. He also has pierced ears and a small scar above his left eye. At the time of his disappearance, he was known to be wearing a white t-shirt under a blue striped polo sweatshirt, baggy blue jeans, a black hooded zip-up jacket with an emblem on the back, a white flat-billed Minnesota Twins baseball cap twisted to the side, white sneakers, a heavy sterling silver necklace, and one stud earring in each ear. Nearly 2 decades later, Brandon Swanson remains missing. His car was found. His route has been reconstructed. Investigators know where he started. They know where he was walking. They even know the exact moment something went wrong. What they don't know is what happened after he uttered those 2 words. Oh shit. Somewhere in the darkness of rural Minnesota, Brandon disappeared. And despite years of searching, the question remains the same. What did Brandon see in those final seconds? And will we ever uncover any forensic evidence to help us find out? To share your thoughts on this week's episode, or to share your theories about what could have happened to Brandon Swanson, be sure to follow us on social media at Forensic Tales. And if you want to listen to new episodes early and ad-free, consider signing up for our Patreon at patreon.com/forensictales. You can get early ad-free access to new episodes and monthly full-length bonus episodes for as little as $3 a month. Your support on Patreon directly helps to fund the show's production, research, and editing costs. And as an independent, one-woman podcast, your support truly helps to keep this show going. Forensic Tales is a Rockefeller audio production. The show is written and produced by me, Courtney Fretwell. If you'd like to support the show and help fund research, production, and editing, you can do so with a small monthly contribution on Patreon. Patreon supporters get early access to ad-free episodes and exclusive bonus content. You can learn more at patreon.com/forensictales. And if you enjoy the show, leaving a positive rating or review really helps others discover it. For a full list of sources used in this episode, visit forensictales.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week. Until then, remember, not all stories have happy endings.
Keep your wellness routine going strong all summer. Kachava's new travel packs help you stick to your daily ritual even when you're on the go. Just one packet of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake provides complete nutrition wherever you are, with 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and more. Simplify your daily ritual. Go to kachava.com and use code NEWS for 15% off. That's KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.